relativistic independent quark model. So, Sonali, please go ahead and please switch off your mics during the talk. If you have any query or comment, then unmute and ask.
Okay,
Thank
okay,
you.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sonali, please.
I'm audible completely?
Yes.
Okay. So, a very good evening to one and all, respected teachers and my dear fellow. My name is Sonali Patnaik. I'm a PhD scholar of Siksha Anusandhan University, Bhubaneswar. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Amrish Shivaji for giving me this opportunity to present my work in your esteemed journal club. I am in my final year of my PhD and about to submit my thesis in next 2 to 3 weeks. So basically my work deals with study of heavy flavored meson in a relativistic independent quark model. And this is the, sorry. Yeah, and this is the plan of my presentation. First of all, I will introduce you with our model framework, which is a relativistic independent quark model, which includes these features: construction of a meson state, momentum probability amplitude and momentum distribution function, and prediction to meson masses. Then we apply these model dynamics to discuss these three decay processes. But before that, I would like to speak that why I'm motivated to take BC meson as decays. And then finally, I will conclude with my future work and list of publication. Now, first of all, coming to the introduction, starting with a very basic understanding that in order to understand any physical processes which are occurring in nature, it is necessary to understand the dynamics of the constituent particles, say leptons and hadrons. Now, in order to understand the dynamics of those constituent particles, it is again necessary to understand the theory of a strong interaction, which is called as a quantum chromodynamics. However, this QCD has its inherent complications due to its non-abelian and non-perturbative in nature. Therefore, alternative routes have been taken to describe these hadronic phenomena, and those are by resorting to phenomenological models. In literature, there are plethora of phenomenological models, out of which some are the bag model, cloud bag model, light front quark model, Bethe-Salpeter approach, QCD sum rule, etc. And ours is also one such model, which is called as a relativistic independent quark model. And this model has been successful in describing wide ranging of hadronic phenomena in light as well as in heavy flavor sector. Now coming to this model, in this model, we are picturizing a meson as a color singlet assembly of a quark and antiquark, which are relativistically moving inside a flavor independent potential of this form. Here R is the relative distance between quark and antiquark, and A and V0 are the potential parameter. We incorporate this potential in this zeroth order Lagrangian density and solve the ensuing Dirac equation. Further solving this Dirac equation, we get positive and negative energy solutions called as the quark orbitals for all respective eigenmodes. These are the spin angular part, and this GNL and FNL are the radial parts. For the ground state, the quark orbitals are reduced in this form, which is this. Now, in order to arrive at this solution, a condition is needed to be satisfied, which is called as the binding energy condition, which is this. And for the ground state, when we substitute n equal to 1 and l equal to 0, this binding energy condition is reduced in this form. So thus, we get the core energy of a meson, which is equal to the sum of the binding energy for quark and antiquark, which is this. And this core energy is coming due to the interaction potential we are taking. But this is not the whole story. In addition to this core energy of meson, we have other additional correction coming due to the residual interactions. And those are corrections are the gluonic correction and center of mass correction. Now, what is gluonic correction? Inside the mesons, quark and antiquark are bound. The binding is due to the exchange of gluons. Now, taking one gluon exchange, for example, the interaction Lagrangian density is written in this form. Here, A mu alpha the vector gluon fields and J mu alpha the color current. Since at small distance, the quarks should be almost free. Therefore, it is reasonable to calculate the shift in the energy of meson core using first order perturbation theory. Therefore, the energy shift is written in the form of color electric part and color magnetic part. So this is the color electric part and this is the color magnetic part. So from here we get the total energy of a meson for the ground state, which is equal to the core energy of meson, which is coming from the interaction potential plus the correction due to the gluonic correction. And this work has already been published in Physical Review D. Now coming to our second correction, which is the center of mass correction. This correction states that the independent motion of quarks inside the hadron core does not lead to a state of definite total momentum. Therefore, the energy associated with the spurious center of mass motion must provide a further correction to the hadron energy obtained. This prescription was already given by Wong and Doug in the seminal papers. So in this correction, what we do is we decompose a meson state into a plane wave momentum eigenstate in this form, which is this. Now further solving this, we get the average value of the square of individual quark momentum in this form. Now once we got the total energy and we have got the momentum due to the center of mass motion correction, then we can get the mass of a meson from this expression. And this particular work has also been published in Physical Review D. Once we got this mass of meson expression, then with the help of this hyperfine mass splitting, we generate the masses of pseudoscalar and vector meson in our model framework, which is this. While keeping the input parameters as the quark masses. So here we keep the quark masses as our input parameters. We generate the masses of meson. We predict the masses of meson in our model, which is this. These are prediction masses. From here, we could see that it is almost in a good agreement with the experimental prediction. For example, we can see that for the D meson, we have predicted like 2.0149 GeV, and for experiment, it is 2.0101. So after all of these static calculation, we then go for the dynamic calculation. And as I mentioned earlier, the solutions what we have got, the quark orbitals, those are in position space. But any decay process occurs in a momentum eigenspace of the participating mesons. Therefore, we Fourier transform the solution from position space to momentum eigenspace and get the respective momentum probability amplitude for quark and anti-quark for the ground state. Yes.
Sonali, I have a question on your previous slide.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like, your predictions, I mean, before your predictions, are there like other predictions also available for these mesons?
Yeah, other models have their own predictions.
Okay, and like
this is our model predictions.
Yeah, right. So this is what I can see. So you are comparing your prediction with the experiment, but I mean, of course, it looks very nice if I compare 2.0149 and 2.0101. But yes. I don't know basically how good prediction it is, because you haven't shown any errors, neither in your theoretical prediction nor basically on the experimental side what uncertainties.
I use these meson masses while quantifying any decay process. I'll come to those decay process. When we study those decay process, I have incorporated this meson masses, and finally I have predicted the branching ratios, which are again in good agreement with other model predictions as well as experimental predictions.
Right, but I was asking basically question towards basically when you have this experimental measurement, no, for say D plus minus star, it must actually come with some error bars on it.
Okay. No, I haven't taken the errors. I've only taken the central values actually.
Okay, so because like that's very important, especially because I can understand you this way. You can sort of actually compare your prediction with the experiments. But if there are other predictions based on other models, one needs to know that how good your model is, how good your predictions are. Okay. Yeah,
sure.
I mean,
I will take that care. Okay.
Yeah, and this one side question. So, is there any lattice result also available for the calculation of the masses of these mesons?
No, we are not incorporating those lattice results right now. No, we are not taking. But yeah, lattice QCD models are there. They are predicting those.
Okay. Thanks. Please proceed.
Okay. So I was there that we have Fourier transformed the solutions, what we have got, the quark orbitals from position space to momentum eigenspace, and got the respective momentum probability amplitude for quark and anti-quark. This is for the ground state. And for the first time, I have extended this model dynamics to study the decay process in radially excited states. So the corresponding momentum probability amplitudes for quark and anti-quarks are for 2s and 3s states are this. Now, using these momentum probability amplitudes, we construct a momentum profile function, which is a geometric mean of product of these momentum probability amplitudes. This profile function ensures the bound state characteristics of a meson. So after this, we construct a meson core in our model in this manner. So this is how a meson state is construction. Suppose here we are taking a BC meson with momentum P and spin S. This is the bag-like operator, which is expressed in this form. And this bag-like operator is operated upon a Fock state meson. And this is how it is operated. And after imposing a normalization condition, we get a meson normalization in an integral form. Now, having done all this, now we are ready to apply all of these model dynamics to discuss different various decay processes that I have undertaken in my course of study. But before that, I would like to say that why I have studied only BC meson decays. First of all, it is the lowest bound state having two heavy quarks, B and C. This BC meson lie intermediate in mass and size between charmonium and bottomnium, where already the heavy quark interactions are understood well. But in the BC sector, the heavy quark interactions are not yet understood well. Also, it has open flavors.
I have a naive question. So in the previous slide, I just wanted to see your bag-like operator
Yes.
structure.
Yeah.
So what is the operator part on the right-hand side?
This is the Fock state representation.
No, on the third line, yes. So which are the operators here?
Yeah, this is the SU6 flavor coefficient. √3 is the color factor. This is the delta 3 for conservation of momentum and energy, and this is the momentum probability amplitude.
Right. So why this is an operator then on right hand side?
Sorry, this is the delta 3 function, momentum conservation.
That is, no, I'm not asking why delta 3 is there. Meaning I'm asking what is the so left hand side seems like an operator.
Yeah, this is a bag-like operator. This is a bounce. This bag-like operator, it is acting like a bound state characteristics on a meson on this Fock state. See, these are free particles we are getting. When
my question is
this free state.
So I just wanted to ask, right hand side to me of the third line does not look like an operator but a C number.
This thing you are seeing?
The whole expression overall, it is giving me a C number. I will get a number out of it if I do the computation. Why should I call this as an operator?
Kinjal, there's an it's an integral operator. There's an integral.
This is an integral operator.
Okay.
We have integration.
Okay. There's an integral operator D3. Okay. So you have cast it in the momentum space completely.
Yeah. This operator is operating upon the free particles and making the meson state bound.
Okay. Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was there that this BC meson, the data available in the BC sector is scanned. The masses of BC excited state and even the ground state of BC star have not yet been determined. Therefore, it provides a fertile ground for both theoretical and experimental studies and hence provide further motivation to carry out my work in this BC sector. So first of all, my first application is a two-body decay process where a BC star decaying to BC meson and BC is decaying to BC star gamma. Now, taking the contribution of both of these topologically equivalent diagram, I go for the S matrix calculation, incorporating the initial and final meson state from our model framework and integrating over the wave packet representation. I derive the transition amplitude, MFI, which is this. Now, incorporating this MFI in this generic expression of decay width, I get the corresponding decay width expression for both of these transitions.
So, sorry, isn't the mass of the BC star larger than the mass of BC?
Yes, BC star is a vector meson.
And BC?
And BC is a pseudoscalar meson.
So how can how can both the same, if BC star is more massive than BC, then how can BC decay to BC star gamma? It has to conserve energy, right? One of them has to be, if they are at all stable states or semi-stable states.
Yes,
So
we have states like,
if the mass of one is greater than the mass of the other, then you can't have a decay process. From the
yes,
lighter to the
when
heavier
BC is
state.
decaying to BC star, then BC.
Yeah. I'm just asking common sense question. I'm not asking. I just don't understand conservation of energy. If both of them can take place, both of these processes can't conserve energy, can they? Maybe I don't understand even experiment.
Yeah.
BC. Well, so here you don't BC star. You don't have an man. Where go by? What is the experimental mass of BC star?
No, there is no experimental mass of BC star. We have predicted the mass of BC star.
Okay, no, stay with that table. Don't go away. 1 second.
Yeah, just go to that table, the table which you have predicted.
Okay.
Don't keep changing it that fast. So BC star is more massive than BC. Therefore, I would expect that BC star can decay to BC, since their charge and all are the same, plus gamma. But
Yes.
how will BC go decay to BC star plus gamma?
When BC
That
is
will not
decaying,
conserve energy.
yeah, I'm saying when BC is decaying to BC star, then I'm considering the BC to be in 3A state, so that the 3A state is decaying to BC star 1A state. Both
And
of
what
them
is
are
the
not in the same state.
No, I'm not talking about angular momentum. I'm talking about conservation of energy.
Yes.
How can a lighter particle decay to a heavier particle?
I think he's talking about higher resonance of BC actually. Like,
yes, I am saying that when BC is decaying.
Sonali,
Yes.
just a moment. So see, what Professor Aulak is asking is a very simple question, and that is related to that a lighter particle cannot decay into heavier particle. I think we all agree with this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, you have to tell that when you are saying that you are considering higher resonances of BC star, what is the mass? Because whatever you do, if the mass is not heavy, if the particle is not heavier than into which it is decaying, this process will not happen. So all you have to tell that whichever state you are considering, what is the mass of that BC star in that state?
Okay. So for example, when a BC is decaying to BC star, so I'm considering the BC in higher state, that is in 2S and 3S state, whose mass is 6.3028 GeV. In that case, when BC is decaying to BC star, the BC star is in 1S state, whose mass is 3.0826 GeV.
Is 3 GeV less? This is not good notation. If you write this, you have to specify. That means your BC star don't refer to particles at all. They are some kind of code words for quantum numbers for you, but they don't refer to mass eigenstates in any sense at all.
So you have to basically use another notation.
Come on, that's not standard particle physics notation. Yeah, in your subfield, you may be using such shorthand, but this doesn't make sense to, if you explain it to anybody. It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I don't.
No, that's okay actually, Sonali. I think that's an important feedback that so that it doesn't create any confusion. You cannot denote basically this different states of the particle which have different mass by the same notation, no?
You have to write down all the other quantum numbers, and you have to write down the mass associated with each one of those, each set of conserved quantum numbers, and that specifies the state completely.
Right.
Yeah, like you have to
Otherwise
mention
it has
this
no
is
meaning.
BC
Okay,
star
so I
going
have to mention that
BC1S.
whenever I'm considering the decay.
Yes.
US goes to BC. This I think you have to mention. Then it's clear, I think so. Yeah. I think that's a valid point.
Yeah. Okay, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you. So from here we can see that from this decay width expression, this G BC star BC are the coupling constant obtained from the respective transition form factors in the limit q square tends to 0, and k is the daughter Meson momentum. After this, we need certain input parameters to quantify these decay processes, and these are the input parameters what we have taken in our model framework. A and V0 are the potential parameters, and these are the quark masses and quark binding energies. Similarly, for 2s and 3s state, we have also generated the quark binding energies and quark masses, which is this. After incorporating these input parameters, we then go for the numerical analysis. So first of all, here I'm showing the q square dependence of the form factors. And from here, we can see that the form factor is an analytical continuation from physical space-like, where q square is less than 0, to physical time-like, where q square is greater than 0. And this arrow represents the 0 recoil point. And after this, we have also predicted the dependence of decay width on delta m, where delta m is the mass difference between BC star and BC Meson. Now, the sensitivity of this dependence of decay width and delta m will give a clue to the experimental prediction for the mass of BC star Meson from this particular prediction. And after this, we have predicted the decay rates for all of these transitions for 1s to 1s and 2s to 2s, 3s to 3s, and for other hindered and allowed transitions where the mass splitting is marginal and where the mass splitting is comparatively large. So these are our work prediction, which are again in a good agreement with all of these model prediction based on relativized quark model, Bethe-Salpeter approach, relativistic quark model, and etc. So basically in this particular decay process, I have predicted the transition energies, coupling constant, and decay width for energetically possible decay modes. We have also predicted the q square dependence of transition form factor, where a space-like form factor is shown to have an analytical continuation to physical time-like region. And this particular work has been published in Physical Review in the year 2017. And these are the references for this work. Now coming to my second application, where I have added up my work with a 3-body decay process, where a BC is decaying to BC star with lepton pairs. Here, photon is off-shell virtual one, which is leptonizing to lepton pairs. Again, taking both of the topologically equivalent diagram, I go for the S matrix calculation, and from S matrix, I derive the invariant transition amplitude. Here again, we have two Lagrange invariant pieces, the leptonic tensor and hadronic tensor. The leptonic part is calculated in lepton frame of reference, rest frame, and hadronic part is calculated in hadronic rest frame. And incorporating the individually leptonic and hadronic tensor, we get the respective decay width expression for this particular transition. Again, using the same set of input parameters, we go for the numerical analysis. Here again, I'm showing the q square dependence of the form factors. From here, we could see that for the allowed transition, where the mass splitting is marginal, the q square dependence are found to be linear. But for the hindered transitions, where the mass splitting is comparatively large, the form factors, the q square dependence are coming to be in parabolic form. And these are again the predicted decay rates for all of these transitions, which are again in a good agreement with the model based on Bethe-Salpeter formalism. And this particular work has also been published in Physical Review D in 2018. These are the references for this. Now, coming to my third application, which is a semi-leptonic decay process, where a BC is decaying to an eta C or a Jebsheva with an electron and a neutrino. The corresponding Feynman diagram, tree level Feynman diagram for this decay process is this. Again, taking the initial and final Mason states.
Sonali?
Yes.
Can I have a question?
Yeah.
So in your this previous project where you considered E plus E minus in the final state,
Yes.
there you considered only the photon, right?
Yes.
In principle, you could have considered the Z boson also, an off-shell Z boson.
Yes. Yeah. I can consider that also. Yes.
So is there any reason that you did not consider that diagram?
No, actually, from the literature, when a photon, my first application was when a photon was an on shell, and after that, I wanted the photon should be an off shell so that it would leptonize to lepton pairs. Therefore, connecting to that particular work, I did this extension.
Right, right. But yeah, I mean, because now you are basically considering in the final state electron and neutrino, and as you have rightly drawn the diagram, it can mediate only through a virtual W.
Yes.
So in the same spirit, in the previous when you have L plus L minus or E plus E minus in the final state, of course, I understand that the dominant contribution will come from a particle which has which is massless, but I mean, the point is basically if you are doing a calculation in full electroweak theory, and if you want your prediction to be gauge invariant, you should include that contribution as well.
Okay. So in my future studies, I could incorporate that.
You can study basically its effect, and the effect basically on the interference term, because the diagram where Z only Z is there because it's an amplitude, no? So you will add up the amplitude for the photon and the amplitude for the Z, and when you square it, of course, the Z contribution is supposed to be very suppressed. But I don't know actually the details that like how much is the mass difference between this initial state and final state that you would be able to see an effect, which is the interference between the photon and the Z diagram.
Okay, so basically I can study the effect of Z bosons.
Yes, which interferes with the photon.
Okay. Yeah, I will definitely take that note. Thank you so much. So can I go forward?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So here again, I have derived the MFI, the invariant transition amplitude. Here again, we have two Lagrange invariant pieces, the leptonic part and hadronic tensor. The leptonic tensor is calculated in lepton rest frame and hadronic tensor is calculated in the vector Meson helicity frame. For the convenience of this calculation, we have used this two frames. So figure A denotes the lepton rest frame. Here we are assuming that the W boson is decaying in Z direction. The electron that is coming out is making an angle theta with the Z, and the neutrino is in opposite direction. So in this rest frame, we are calculating the leptonic tensor in the vanishing lepton mass limit. Here we are not taking the mass of the leptons. Now in this second figure, this is the vector Meson helicity frame, where again we are assuming that the W boson is decaying in Z direction and the final particle are emitting in negative Z direction. As it is a helicity frame, so here we are expressing the hadronic amplitude in terms of expressed in terms of the basis vectors E plus, E minus, and E0, where ultimately these basis vectors are expressed in terms of the Cartesian coordinates x cap, y cap, and z cap. And H plus, H minus, and H0 are our helicity amplitudes, which are expressed in terms of the form factors. And those form factors are calculated from the covariant expansion taken from the model. Now, integrating over the polar and azimuthal angle, we get the respective decay width expression for BC going to eta C is this. Here, transverse part do not contribute, and the decay width expression for BC going to Jebshai, where H plus, H minus, H0, three of them, transverse and longitudinal, take contribution is this. And this H plus, H minus, H0 are expressed in terms of the form factors. And these are the pseudoscalar Meson form factor F. And these are the vector Meson form factors, 4 vector Meson form factors, which I have calculated from the covariant expansion. Now, after this, again, using the same set of input parameters, I have predicted numerical analysis. So first here, I would like to show an interesting behavior of a quark radial momentum distribution amplitude. From this first figure, we see that this solid line represents the initial BC, this dashed line represents the charmonium 1s state, these 2 peaks represent to charmonium 2s state, and 3 peaks represent to charmonium 3s state. So from here, we could see that the overlap between the initial BC with this charmonium 1s is maximum, then with the charmonium 2s and 3s state. So from here, we calculate the overlap integral of the weak form factors. Similarly, this is for the initial BC with the final Jebshire particle. The overlap is this, and similar trend has also been seen in other model predictions. And this is the Q-square dependence of the form factors. From here, we could see that for the ground state, the Q-square is increasing with the increasing Q. The form factors are increasing with this increasing Q-square. But for the radially excited state, for 2s and 3s state, we see that the form factors are decreasing with this increasing Q-square. And this is because of the nodal structure present inside the momentum distribution function. So after this, these are again the predicted branching ratios for all of these transitions. These are our work prediction, which are in the hierarchy of from 3s to 2s to 1s, which are again in a good agreement with all of these model predictions based on Isgur-Weiss function, relativistic quark model, QCD model, and perturbative methods. And
so Sonali,
yes,
there is no like experimental measurement for these branching ratios, these transitions.
No, for no, here actually I am not taking lepton mass. So after this particular work, I am showing the transition where I have taken muonic and tauonic mode. There we have the experimental predictions.
Okay. And do you know actually like what is the reason that I thought or maybe Vishal, you can comment, like, is there any problem in having experimentally these transitions being observed?
Okay, the first thing is that BC is only produced at LSCB. That's the
Okay.
first thing. And another thing is LSCB is not very good with electron when it comes actually.
Yes.
If they have a muon, then it's fine. And for tau, they actually use 3 prong actually, like 3 pion decay, which gives them a vertex and then they can find. So that's why if you see, they have only studied BC to gypsy mu neutrino and tau neutrino. And actually, if you really see, this work is interesting there because if you have gypsy, it's more like your lepton flavor universality. I think that's why people are doing. I think that's what your Sonali motivation is, right? Somehow
Yes.
To relate with that one. So yeah,
Okay.
that's the reason that electron is. And currently, if I'm not wrong, only gypsy nu and gypsy.
Gypsy is decaying to mu plus mu minus.
That's only there is actually gypsy BC to gypsy mu and gypsy to tau nu. Its ratio is measured.
Okay.
And there is some deviation, I think, so with the standard model. Not much, but maybe then 2 or 1 sigma something.
Okay. So, Sonali, like for example, like I mean, your prediction, if I look at BC plus going to eta C and E plus nu E, the first line.
Yes.
I mean, how do you see, like, how do you see your result compared to others? Because I think the closest is the NRQ.
It is coming in the order of magnitude, actually, 10 to the power minus 15.
Okay.
Here I have not represented the magnitude. Actually, the order of magnitude is 10 to the power minus 15, which is mostly in agreement with all of these predictions.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, this I have taken in percentage, actually, that's why.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So after this, we have also predicted the longitudinal and transverse polarization ratios for this particular decay process, BC going to J psi, in lower, higher, and total kinematic region. And from here, we see that for BC going to J psi and for psi 2s, the longitudinal part is taking contribution in the total region. But for BC going to psi 3s, the transverse mode is more dominant in total region. So basically in this work, we have studied the behavior of radial momentum distribution amplitude and calculated the Lorentz invariant weak form factors. We have also predicted the Q-square dependence of weak form factors. Our predicted branching ratios for decays involving ground and radially excited charmonium states are in good agreement. We have also studied the longitudinal and transverse polarization contribution. And this particular work have recently been accepted for publication in European Journal Physics Plus. So these are the references for this work. And recently I have completed my work on this particular decay, study of B decays, where I have incorporated the lepton mass, BC going to eta C. Along with that, I have studied B going to D star in view of the experimental prediction of lepton universality ratios. So here again, I have used the initial and final meson states from our model framework and computed the lepton hadron correlation function. Here I have adopted the spin helicity spin formalism and derived the differential decay rate for this two particular decay processes. This HU, HL, HP are the helicity contributions. And using the same set of input parameters, I have predicted the decay width, which are in a agreement of other model predictions based on QCD and spectator model. Here I have not shown particularly the other model predictions. The order of magnitude here is 10 to the power minus 15, and these are the decay processes. And finally, the prediction would be incomplete if I have not predicting the three observable in our model framework, the RJ Psi, RD, and RD star. The model prediction for these three observables are this. These are the anomalies from experimental predictions. So here we could see that the deviations are not large enough to claim for the new physics scales, but they are not, neither they are small to ignore. Therefore, there is need to incorporate some new physics operators in our model, which we would like to do that in my future extension of work. So with this, I would like to summarize that for now, this model, the relativistic independent quark model in this working approximation has provided a realistic framework in describing wide-ranging hadronic phenomena in the ground as well as in the radially excited states. The prediction of all of these decay processes are almost in agreement with other model predictions. Of course, in some cases, there have been disagreements due to its inherent constraints of model dependent studies, but the future experiments at LHCb and Z factory can only infer which model is closer to the truth. And in extension to this work and in my future work, I would like to study more such decay processes. And recently I am going through the on-shell methods to calculate the Higgs decaying to 2 photons and to study the more new physics scales to this. So these are the list of my publications in my 4 years of PhD. And thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sonali. If there are more questions or comments, please.
I would
please ask.
I would really like to thank for the honest feedback. I would like to take note for my next talk wherever I'm going to give. I would like to mention all of the feedbacks, whatever sir has told me.
Sonali, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
So, in your model, the way you are making this prediction both for the masses, okay, and then if I understand correctly, you have predicted the masses for these mesons. You take that as an input, and then you are studying their decay.
Yeah, for input, I'm taking the quark masses as input parameters, and then we are predicting, we are generating the masses of mesons. Then we are incorporating those meson masses while quantifying the decay processes.
So which quark masses you are considering? For example, like I think there is no for the quarks, because we cannot see them physically. There are these what is called basically. So which quark masses are you considering?
Yes.
There is something called
So these are the quark masses U, D, S, C, and B.
So
I'm not taking.
So from quark. Where do
I'm
you
not
get
taking top quark.
Okay, from where actually do you get this? Like there is not one kind of masses for the quarks, right? what these masses are?
No, we have fixed this input parameters for all the decay processes, for all the description
Sure.
of decay processes. We have fixed
I
this.
I
Almost it
understand.
is a parameter free calculation, we can say.
And that's what actually is not clear to me. So you have fixed, yes, but what I'm saying basically, there is not one type of quark mass. No, you have this running quark masses,
Constituent quark mass and
constituent quark masses, and so which are these basically? These are running quark masses, or basically the constituent
No,
quark
these
masses?
are running quark masses.
Okay. Okay, I see. So yeah, the main question that I wanted to understand, that in your predictions, where is the scope for the improvement?
Yes, as I have said, that our model is quite constrained for describing the decay processes within standard model. Our model has not yet described the decay process beyond the standard model. So there is a need to incorporate some input parameters like input operators, so that we could able to describe the decay processes such as Higgs decays, so that it could
That is the next step. But what I'm not sure, I'm sure what I'm trying to ask, that your model must have actually some limitations. Okay, because you're talking about basically strongly interacting objects, these mesons. You must have made actually certain assumptions. These assumptions basically, if those assumptions are changed, you will basically have a very different prediction.
Yeah, first thing I would like to say that in the way we are saying the model, it is a relativistic independent quark model, because in our meson state construction, this integral bag operator, this has a delta 3 function. This doesn't have a delta 4. We are bringing the delta 4 function by using a binding energy approximation, a loose binding approximation that states that the energy of a quark plus energy of an anti-quark equals to energy of a meson. That may be one of the limitation, that we are taking a binding approximation, loose binding approximation, to incorporate this relativistic effect in our model. That may be one kind of limitation, I would say. But because straightforwardly, we are not taking a delta 4 function here.
Okay. And so once you have computed these masses for your BC mesons, when you are studying the decay, okay, in the calculation for the decay, are you using any form factors like hadronic form factors, etc.?
Yes, we are deriving those form factors.
I mean, did you show basically, like in your presentation, where are those form factors that you have derived?
For semi-leptonic decay process, I have showed. Even for these electromagnetic decay process, we have derived the form factors using the covariant expansion. Just a minute. Yes. Yeah, this is the pseudoscalar form factor F. F plus is the pseudoscalar form factor, which we have derived using the covariant expansion and using our model expression. This is for the pseudoscalar, and these are for the vector meson form factor. This G, F, A plus. Yes, these are 3 form factors for the vector meson.
Okay. 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 Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't have any more points.
Okay. Sonali, can you go to the quark masses?
Quark masses?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think UD quark. Here you have taken 78 MeV for UD masses. I mean, how do you fix that?
Yes, we have
fixed. It should be
this.
order of MeV, right? I mean, either you take the constituent quark mass, or you take the. I mean, how do you decide the mass value here?
Yes, we.
U and D are generally order of MeV 10 MeV or less than that.
We are. We suppose we are taking an experimental we are taking the experimental mass. While seeing those experimental mass, here we are fine tuning our potential parameter by fixing those mass. Suppose we are fixing the quark mass to be this, and we are fine tuning our potential, then we are generating the measure mass using the Newton-Raphson method, and from there we could see that it is matching with the experimental result or not. Once it is matching with the experimental result, and at those values the quark masses are fixed.
Okay, so this is after you get your result. I mean,
Yes.
okay, okay. Okay.
So just one thing, you only did this mesons, you also did with the gypsum and other stuff, because they are very well like gypsum.
Sorry?
So you also did with carbonium stuff, because I think
Yes, we have predicted the mass of eta C 2s and 3s, but there is no experimental mass of gypsum.
no,
So that at that we have taken the PDG values of gypsum.
gypsum. No, but one thing I'm again get confused. I think maybe it was because just now I think you were saying that you were getting the quark masses by fitting the meson mass, right?
Yes.
So so it's kind of a free parameters, and
Yes,
then
it's free
so
parameters.
what is the
Parameter free calculation.
so
Yeah.
what are the inputs actually for the meson
Yes, these
masses?
are the input parameters. Initially, I have shown A and V0. This A and V0, which is there in our quark potential, in our model potential, interaction potential. Here, A and V0 are the potential parameters.
Anyway, for me it's a bit difficult to.
This,
What is the form of V0?
yes, V0 is, yes, for ground state, we are taking the V0 is minus 0.1375 GeV, and A is 0.017166 GeV cube. For ground state is this, and for 2s state, we have fine tuned our potential to 0.01545 GeV, and then we have predicted the meson masses for 2s and 3s state.
Anyway, I think I still have to digest. So another thing was you were doing this BC star.
Sorry,
Right?
not audible, sir.
So you're doing this BC star, right?
Yes.
BC gamma. So did you also try to do the same with, like, because these are not measured, and I really doubt that LSEB, because you have a very soft photon, so they will be able to see this one. Anyway, they always surprise, so maybe. But did you also try with BC2s to BC pi decays also, because I think they are measured. So if you predict that, that will be
No,
more
BC to pi I have not done.
BC2s to BC pi, because I think that's observed, right? So if something is observed, that's much better for experimental side to have a trust in a theory, right?
Okay.
That okay, it's
Okay.
working. So because I think on no other resonances, only 2s and BC2s and BC is known, right? That
Yes.
Yeah. And the photon will be very soft actually, right? This energy will be quite less.
Yes. Okay.
So I'm not sure that LSCB will be able to, they use a photon conversion with E plus E minus, but again, then you have a E plus E minus, right?
Yes. Another thing that other sir has told, that to find the effect of Z bosons again with the photon, that could also be possible.
Okay. So just talking about this, maybe it's not in with your.
Sorry, sir, not audible.
No, I'm saying this is not with your study, but do you have any feeling like we are seeing this lepton flavor universality, like violation, which is seeing in B, the same has a trend in BC, people are observing, right?
Yes.
So in the charm sector also, you do think something can be observed there, or it's not possible? You have some idea?
Yes, it could be possible for the charm sector as well. Right now,
okay, this okay, it's okay. I just wanted to see if you have a thought or something. That's fine. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks,
yeah,
Sonali.
thank you.
Okay, are there more questions or comments? Yeah, if not, let's thanks again, Sonali, for a nice talk.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay. Then bye all.